Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my vlog, where I highlight my creative journey and extract the various lessons that I'm learning along the way, as well as the various tactics that I have learned that I'm applying to overcome those obstacles, right? So first off, if you're a Star Wars fan, may the 4th be with you. Secondly, since you probably last saw me, I have gotten a haircut. We're quarantined, at least I still am, and, it was, for me, it was just time to get a haircut. I'm solo, so for me, the only option was a buzz cut, so I did that. And that's why I kind of find it hilarious, in the worst of ways, when I see people protesting out there saying that they need a haircut. It's like, A, you don't, because it's not like, in the grand scheme of things, that's not really what you should be looking for. Secondly, you can get a haircut if you want. I am proof of that. Might not be a haircut you like, but that's a separate subject, right? Anyway, so as far as, things that have been happening to me since last week, it's kind of been interesting. I think, from a grand perspective that I think we as human beings can relate to is this idea that at least in America, certain states are opening up and others are not. And there's this odd sense, at least for me, where it's like, am I missing out on something? They're getting to open. Meanwhile, we're still in kind of quarantine. It was announced today, at least, that starting Friday, California will slowly reopen. So there's that sense, but it's like, is that the safe option, right? Even though, like, that's what we all want, is to get back to normal life, quote unquote, is, rushing to it the best option? I don't know. I don't pretend to know either. But all I can say is, like, yeah, I think there's that sort of sense of like, wow, other people are getting to do it, and it's something that I want. It's conflicting things. Because obviously you want the safety for everyone, but at the same time, you can't help but have the desires that you have, to sort of see your friends and do the things that you used to do, right? On the positive side, what I have been seeing is a lot of my friends really being creative, right? At first, I think for at least my group of friends, it was cool to stay up all night, drink, and just kind of do whatever you wanted. Like, it was basically, I don't know, we all knew the severity of things and the cost of, but like for us, it was like, oh, it's we're gonna enjoy it, right? And after a certain point, that kind of that essentially, it no longer becomes fun if you're doing it like every single day for weeks on end, right? And so I'm excited by the creativity that my friends have shown. I use the word creative in a broad number of sense. I have a friend who's getting his real estate license during this. I have someone that they're opening kind of like, they're making pastries and various kind of food, and it's very kind of small scale, but nonetheless, they're doing curbside pickup and things like that. I see people launching their YouTube channels and, writing scripts and whatever else, right? Just all the things that they've been kind of wanting to do, but haven't had time. Now they're finally kind of putting forth. And so from that perspective, yeah, that has been a positive. And certainly I've been someone that has done that, during this period, and I try to balance it at times. Like, I try to just, if I want to just relax and just watch a bunch of movies, I'll do that. And as I said before in other vlogs, I do a mix, things that are comfort films. So like, for example, Little Rascals, I'll never get tired of that movie. And it just brings a smile to my face, no matter how many times I see it. And then seeing stuff that, I haven't yet seen. So, for example, just recently I saw Underwater, the Kristen Stewart movie, and also Wendy, which is kind of a Searchlight Pictures kind of a take on Peter Pan, essentially, like the lore of Peter Pan. And I'm not saying go out and go see those movies, but I'm saying like for me it was a nice mix and things like that, and they were equally as enjoyable, right? Just to kind of get out of my comfort zone as well. So I've been kind of bad, and I think overall that's been my mentality with everything that I do. There's a level of comfort that I try to have, but also push myself beyond my comfort. One of the things that I was talking with my friend Daryl about was this notion, though, that I'm very happy for my friends that they are being creative. But, when we first started, we had like a Friday night kind of a virtual get together. And, as weeks had gone by, that was no longer a ritual people were committing to. They had other things that took priority. And, I expressed to Daryl, like, that saddened me, because it's like, if we can't make the time for each other now, when in theory we have all the time in the world, how's that going to look once we get back to normal life and, the day-to-day pressures of everything really hit us. And of course I knew like that wasn't necessarily the case, but that, I just, sometimes you got to just express yourself, and that was kind of my version of it to him. And, he brought in a correct perspective of, at the end of the day, I think people just, when they have stuff and, throughout the week, they're doing Zoom call after Zoom call for their normal stuff, work and dealing with life, whether it's, unemployment issues, whether it's job issues, like whatever it may be, right? From a business perspective, we're on a lot of Zoom calls. And, at the end of the week, it's like, okay, you're zoomed out. And so he's correct, and in that sense, but it doesn't necessarily negate the feeling. But what's interesting, obviously, just kind of, I think most times in life, just kind of talking about it and, hearing each other out. It's not like I didn't see that perspective, but just to be heard, certainly, I don't know, eases the pain, if you will. And, and he appreciated my perspective, I appreciate his perspective, and just the idea of talking it out, it made both of us feel a lot better, and that's kind of cool. I think what's also interesting, at least for me, I think another thing that a lot of people can relate to is this idea of waiting for a paycheck. So whether it is the stimulus check, whether it is if people have small businesses, waiting for the loans to come in and things like that. For me, there's certain jobs that I have done, but I'm waiting for the check it's been processed through the company, but now I'm, waiting for the checks to arrive. Mind you, I'm not talking about my full-time job at Cadence 13 by any means. These are side projects, and I think we all have to kind of accept that, like they'll come kind of when they come. But certainly, I'd be lying if I didn't say like, yeah, it would be much more beneficial to get it sooner rather than later, since, I've done the work and things like that. But, they're coming, and it is what it is. And I know I'm lucky enough to have even side incomes, let alone, I have my full-time job, and then to have like side stuff in addition right now, like that's a big blessing. And so I don't take that for granted. An interesting kind of thing that I learned a while ago, but certainly for me resurfaces right now is, I think a lot of times as creatives, we try to just isolate us like, oh, I'm just a creative, I don't get involved in politics. And, other professions can do this too. It's not just to creatives, but the idea that like, just given, no matter what our profession is, like, I don't get involved in politics. And the notion is that, well, that you not getting involved in politics is a political stance because you don't want to deal with that stuff. And in a sense, like, you're so privileged that you don't have to deal with that stuff where other people do. And so, from that perspective, I always, try to remind myself of that. And, and I'm not saying like I'm the most political person in the world or whatever else. I'm not going to spew my politics right here, right now, by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm just saying, don't just dismiss that. And I think, in watching like The Last Dance, which is documented about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, like, last season of their greatness, if you will, under Phil Jackson. That was kind of a thing that came up where Michael Jordan didn't endorse someone politically, and finally, he admitted like that, yeah, it was because of he didn't want to get involved. He wanted to kind of not be involved in politics from a PR perspective, because it could have meant less money, right, coming in and things like that. And it's not for me to say is that right or is that wrong, but I think a lot of people felt at least the sense like, okay, at least you admitted that much, like you were acting from a selfish perspective, and yeah, there's no real point to it other than, it's kind of interesting, right? It's a weird intersection of you have to kind of stay informed, but at the same time, by just kind of overly reading news article after news article, you can get so bogged down and, in a sense, hurt your mental health, quite frankly. So, you kind of have to find that nice intersection and things like that, but just know, like all things, don't take that side for granted. Anyway, as far as my own creative, things have been moving forward. I think that last week, what was really cool for me was getting a draft of like the sound mix for my feature film. That was really cool. It's only about like 15 minutes of the entire movie, but like just seeing how much it elevates it, right? And what's kind of cool is not only is it elevated, but just having someone that is like dedicating their knowledge and bringing something to the table. So they're not just like, okay, just doing a bare minimum, let's say, which in theory would have been fine, like if they just made it sound good, but they're bringing ideas to the table, and it just sounds like, it's by no means like it's a draft. It's not complete. Just even that 15 minutes, there's going to be things that have to be tweaked, but just even the things that I never would have thought of, like during flashback scenes, for example, changing up the voice and giving it a texture. To me, that's really cool. And also, like, there's sound effects and Foley, and it just really heightens the movie and gives it a liveliness that wasn't there before, And so that's exciting to me, once you start to kind of see fully it on the screen and hear it in that sense. So that was really cool. Another sort of aspect was I started actually writing the script that I want to shoot as a second feature. Now, I've been outlining for a number of weeks and things like that, and I've been pondering and, doing some research, and at a certain point, you can have too much research and things like that. So for me, the outline I made, I feel good about. There's a couple of like question marks as far as, should I do this or should I do that? But in terms of, it's more a question of execution, really, less so about like what needs to happen. It's like, if character A and character B need to talk, well, are they yelling at each other, or are they, kind of having a more heart-to-heart moment, right? Obviously, that has an effect on a lot of things, but still, nonetheless, they must talk, and they must talk about X, Y, and Z. So I don't necessarily know how I'm going to execute it, but I know that they must talk, right? So in the outline, it's kind of written that way, character A plus character B, talk. And even though there's question marks in my mind and I don't have it fully fleshed out, it's like, let me just start writing the script. And when I get to that point, I'll have a better idea, because I can more clearly see the characters, right? I can, now they have a voice, they have actions, things have happened, and I can better assess how they feel in that moment. And so, for me, the writing process, I know some people will always say like outline until you get the perfect outline and then work on the script, and because it'll be that much easier. But I think, revisions happen all the time. And so for me, it's like, let me go forward with the script, because I could be in outline land for the rest of my life. Let me go with the script. And then if for some reason I hit a block, well, I can revisit the outline and things like that. And, kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so I'm moving forward with that. And, I'm very excited that like I've essentially started the next phase of stuff. So really looking forward to that. the other kind of aspect creatively, I continue to work on the I'll call it a memoir, I guess, even though it's kind of also a how-to book. But in terms of it's a memoir of how I made Idol, which is my first feature film. And it's meant to inspire creatives and give them lessons and so forth. And it's been fun, I kind of do this, right? I dictate the chapters and then I transcribe them, because it's a lot easier to talk about it from a memory perspective versus like just writing like at a computer. And it's been fun in that way because it's kind of like a trip down memory lane. And what's kind of interesting, some of the things that you forget, like there's a couple of things that happen. I'm like, I'm racking my brain of like how they actually managed to get to that point, because it ended up being like the best thing. And so, for that stuff, I'll definitely have to kind of talk to other people around me of like, hey, do you remember, like, why did we do this? So that'll be kind of fun to learn it from that perspective, and then it'll help kind of fill out the story. And then quite frankly, there's certain things that only I thought about and had to kind of ponder, and I don't remember them, at least in this moment. And so, there's a part of me that's sad in that sense that like, like it's not that history is forgotten, but certainly my own history is slightly forgotten. But nonetheless, you go forward in the way that you do, and obviously, like, I'm happy at the end of the day that I went through the process, and the end result, for me works, right? So yeah. Anyway, the point being, I guess, none of us can remember everything from our lives, but certainly you want to remember like the big stuff and not necessarily just the outcomes, but yeah, the moments that mean something to you. And so, while I might not remember every tiny detail, certainly the moments that mean a lot to me, I remember from that. So that's been fun to kind of, like I said, go down memory lane. Speaking of the movie, so at the start of essentially last week, it was announced that that Cannes would be essentially canceled, but they would be part of the We Are One Film Festival, which is a festival in partnership with YouTube, but Tribeca's really the Tribeca Film Festival is really running with this, even though films from like the Cannes Film Festival and other movies are going to be participating. Now, even since that came out, it's still unclear how the selection process works, and what the full details of it will be. It's happening end of May, so like May 29th on YouTube, but beyond just kind of that initial announcement, there hasn't really been much information. Now, I was going to email the Cannes Film Festival at the end of last week, so Friday, just kind of checking in if I didn't hear anything. And come to find out, Wednesday I actually did find out that Idol was not selected. And, for all intents and purposes, I've said this multiple times. My goal was never to, like, that part of it is outside of my control, whether or not I got selected. And certainly, like, for all intents and purposes, like, the festival's not happening, right? It's happening via YouTube, but Tribeca's really organizing it, so it's fully unclear, like, how it all works, right? And I think they're trying to figure it out at the same time. But nonetheless, so I'm happy I got the opportunity to submit it. I'm happy that various French film critics did see the movie, and they were very nice about the rejection, essentially. And if I'm being honest, I wasn't sad. I really wasn't, because as I said, the goal was always just to submit the movie. But nonetheless, knowing that the festival was going quote unquote online, even though I didn't have necessarily details, I talked to my producers Ian Kaiser and Courtney Stewart and ran the idea by them, like, hey, are you guys okay if I send them a response of like, hey, I know how hard it must be to organize a festival at this scale under normal circumstances, let alone what it must be like for you guys now. So I truly appreciate your guys' efforts. I said I wanted to let them know, like, my dream was always just to submit a festival. So the fact that, like, I got to do that, that's a milestone. And certainly I would have been honored to have it be part of the festival. Just that milestone alone has meant a lot, and so I appreciated them. But then also kind of say like, hey, I know, as I understand it, this is going to happen, the We Are One Film Festival on YouTube. If for some reason other movies decide to drop out and not participate, I would love the opportunity to be considered to take up their slot. Now, I did get a very nice response, but and the response was they're not ultimately in charge of like that selection process for the We Are One Film Festival. Again, I didn't get much info beyond that. I'm not sure what that means. But in essence, the answer was no, right? And while that may hurt, I can't have any regrets, right? I put my best foot forward in terms of the movie. And then, I asked very politely, and I meant it, right? I was being sincere. There was no bullshit about that email. And, they said no. And that's all I can do, right? So in times like, I talk about this often, at least I certainly have in the past couple of weeks through various lessons that I've taught, and certainly to my friends. But the idea, like, you can only control what you can control. And so I put my best foot forward. I asked, I don't have, as far as the experience is concerned, I don't have any regrets. I can't, because I did what I could, right? And the rest is what it is. And, that might be sad, but at the same time, like, how many times did J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter book, the first one, get rejected? And there's hundreds of stories like that. In fact, when she did get her rejection letter for, the first rejection letter she ever got, she framed it because she says, like, now I'm a writer. The idea that she wrote something and it got rejected proves that she is a writer because she had something that was able to be rejected. And so in that sense, I kind of look at my movie in that way. Like, yeah, I submitted something, and the fact that I was able to submit something that was able to be rejected, well, proves that I have made something, that people can see. And it was rejected. So, on to the next. Harry Potter, obviously, as far as like, we'll just say like the rest is history type of thing. She kept submitting and submitting, rejection after rejection, but then, someone sees the value of it, boom, the rest is history. And, now we have movies and we have theme parks and yada, 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 right? So, and I'm not saying that's my goal and that's what's going to happen. It's certainly not, that would be like beyond my wildest imagination. She at least had the idea to write 7 books. I have, my movie is just a standalone, you know what I mean? But I certainly have aspirations of other stuff, so, at least in that sense. But I digress. And the point being, again, you control what you can control and don't sweat the rest, right? Just put yourself in a position where you can't have regrets, and then it is what it is. I said it last week, but my intention, once the sound is fully done, is to submit it to other film festivals that might want it, right? And again, the idea is that I don't know if they'll happen this year. I very well could be submitting with the knowledge that the festival could be canceled, and then boo-hoo, right? But nonetheless, what I can control is submitting, and if it goes the way it goes, it's out of my hands. But at least I did what I could, therefore I cannot have regrets. So, in fact, I got an email today reminding me that the deadline for the LA Underground Film Festival is coming up. The submission, the late submission for that is May 25th. So I'll submit to that. That could be a great festival for me to be a part of. Presuming it happens, I don't know. Anyway, I guess the last sort of thing that I wanted to leave you on was this notion. So, I've been keeping in touch with my friends as much as I can, and calling and reconnecting with people that I haven't spoken to in a while. But nonetheless, I am human, and I've been blessed enough to make a lot of connections throughout my life, and I felt like I just wasn't essentially like checking off the boxes fast enough to get to everybody. And so what I decided to do was send out a mass email to the people that I have yet to have kind of spoken to during this time. And I said, and just kind of very short and to the point, like, essentially, hey, just wanted to update you, like, all things considered, I'm doing well. I hope you are too, including your friends and your family. And I acknowledge, like, hey, I know this is a mass email. I would love to, I just haven't had the time, to get in touch, ironic as it may seem. But then nonetheless, just because it's a mass email, please don't negate the sincerity of it. And I would love to have it be a Kickstarter to have some sort of back and forth, a dialogue of some sort of check-in. And I said, I'm here for you, email, text, phone call, whatever the case may be. And that was it, I also chose very specifically not to, like, I didn't feel it was appropriate to be like, and by the way, I'm here's all the things that I'm working on and hope you're doing good, right? If people wanted to know, they had the right to ask me, and I would be honest, I would answer and things like that, but I didn't want it to feel like a newsletter in a sense, because that would have felt to me taking advantage of people, and because I've certainly gotten so many those types of emails from people of like, hey, hope all is well, I'm doing great, and you can buy my new ebook, blah blah blah. And it's like, I don't necessarily fault them, but for me, and it's not like I was selling anything ultimately, it was just like, here's what I'm doing, but nonetheless, it just for me, it didn't feel right. So, I didn't include that, and I sent this out, and, I got some great responses. Not everyone responded, but nonetheless, I got some great responses, and I'm very touched and honored to have reconnected with a lot of wonderful people that have been part of my life, and, at times even strengthened some of, the bonds with certain people. So that's been wonderful, and, on the plus side, like, people, I got some great responses of like, hey, this really made my day type of thing. So that was really great to see, and all that to say, I would encourage you kind of maybe do the same thing. We all want to reconnect with people, and again, you might be overwhelmed for time, but send out a mass email, send out a mass text, and just be sincere about it. Just say, hey, I know, just kind of life, even though we're supposed to have theoretically, have had more time, just life got in the way, and I couldn't, but that doesn't mean I don't think about you, and get in touch. I'm using this as a way to kind of initiate, right? So who knows? It might be worthwhile for you. Anyway, that's kind of what I have for you today. I hope that you gained something from it. I hope, if nothing, that you're inspired, at least in some small way. I don't know. But nonetheless, I thank you for, listening to me and whatnot. If you have any questions or comments, by all means, let me know. I would be honored to respond. I love conversing with you guys, and in fact, I guess quick like last thing that I thought of just now. Various people this week, have been commenting on, several videos and so forth. And, I've actually learned, through their questions, I've actually learned something that I didn't know before. For example, like Avid Media Composer has a version called First, which is literally a free version of that software. It's not a trial. It's not going to go away. And now it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but it'll certainly accomplish, like, for smaller tasks. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for a feature film, but certainly for, YouTube videos, vlogs, news, like whatever it may be, it would get the job done. So, that's something that I learned thanks to someone checking out my stuff. So by no means, don't be shy, don't be bashful. Comment and let me know, ask a question, whatever it may be, Anyway, thank you for taking the time, as I said before. Anyway, I hope to see you next time.